I came to Christmas dinner carrying gifts and smiles only for my mother to look at me coldly and say, "Please, could you just leave? Your sister is on her way with her family, and this day belongs to her." Before I could even respond, she saw my sister pulling up outside and suddenly lost it, screaming, "I told you not to come here." My sister came running in, face twisted with fury, and shouted, "Mom, I told you not to invite them. Why are they here? Thanks for ruining my day." My father rushed to the door, ignoring me completely, and begged my sister, "Please don't leave. She's going right now." My kids looked at me with tear-filled eyes and whispered, "Mom, did we do something wrong?" My mother heard them and barked, "Yes, by showing up here." I took my crying children by the hand and walked out in silence. But what I did next left every single one of them pale with shock. My name is Amelia Mitchell, and I need to tell you about the Christmas that changed everything. The Christmas that finally opened my eyes to 28 years of manipulation, favoritism, and emotional abuse. The Christmas that became the catalyst for the most satisfying revenge I've ever executed. Let me start from the beginning because you need to understand the full picture of what my family put me through before I tell you how I made them pay. I'm the older sister by 3 years. My sister Fiona has always been the golden child. Prettier, more charming, more successful in my parents' eyes. Growing up, I watched as my achievements were minimized, while hers were celebrated with champagne and photo albums. When I graduated valedictorian from high school, my parents took us to Applebee's. When Fiona made honor rules sophomore year, they threw her a party and bought her a car. The pattern continued into adulthood. I became a successful marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, bought my own house at 25, and raised 2 incredible kids, Lydia, now 12, and Lucas, 10, mostly as a single mother after their father abandoned us when Lucas was 2. Meanwhile, Fiona married wealthy real estate developer Brad Thompson at 26 and became a stay-at-home mom to their twin daughters, Sophia and Madison, now 8. But here's the thing about Fiona that my parents never saw or chose to ignore. She's manipulative, entitled, and has made it her mission to exclude me from family events for years. It started small, forgetting to invite me to birthday dinners, scheduling family photos when I was out of town for work, claiming there wasn't enough room at restaurants when everyone knew they could have made accommodations. My parents enabled every bit of it. When I confronted them about the pattern, they'd say things like, "Don't be so sensitive, Amelia," or "You know how Fiona is, just let it go." They treated her emotional outbursts like gospel while dismissing my legitimate concerns as drama. The breaking point had been building for months. In October, I wasn't invited to my father's 62nd birthday celebration because Fiona said the restaurant had limited space. In November, I found out through my cousin's Facebook post that there had been a family gathering at my parents' house that I knew nothing about. When I called to ask why I wasn't invited, my mother said Fiona had organized it as a surprise and forgot to include me. Each incident chipped away at my relationship with Lydia and Lucas, too. They'd ask why Grandma and Grandpa didn't want to see them, why their cousins got to spend time with their grandparents while they didn't. I was running out of excuses and gentle explanations, but Christmas was supposed to be different. My mother, Patricia Mitchell, had called me personally in early December. "Amelia, honey, we're having Christmas dinner at 2 o'clock. Just the family, you, the kids, Fiona, Brad, and the twins. Nothing fancy, but we want everyone together." I was cautiously optimistic. Maybe the holidays had reminded her that she had 2 daughters, not just one. Maybe she'd realized how much she'd been hurting Lydia and Lucas. I spent weeks planning, bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, and even made my grandmother's famous apple pie from scratch, the one that always won raves at family gatherings. Christmas morning, I was genuinely excited for the first time in years. Lydia and Lucas were practically bouncing off the walls with anticipation of seeing their cousins and grandparents. We dressed in our nicest clothes. Lydia in a red velvet dress I'd found on sale at Macy's. Lucas in a button-down shirt and khakis that made him look heartbreakingly grown up. "Mom, do you think Grandma will like the photo album we made her?" Lydia asked as we loaded the presents into my Honda Civic. She'd spend hours organizing pictures from our family trips and everyday moments, decorating each page with stickers and her careful curse of writing. "She's going to love it, sweetheart," I assured her. Though something in my gut was already whispering warnings, we arrived at my childhood home in Millbrook Heights at exactly 2 o'clock. The house looked picture perfect, with white lights wrapped around the porch columns and a massive wreath on the red front door. Through the windows, I could see the dining room table, set with my mother's good china and crystal glasses catching the afternoon light. I rang the doorbell, balancing the apple pie in one hand, while Lydia and Lucas stood beside me, arms full of carefully wrapped presents. When my mother opened the door, I expected to see the warm smile I remembered from childhood Christmases. Instead, her face went pale, then hardened into an expression I'd never seen directed at me before. "Amelia," she said, not moving from the doorway. "What are you doing here?" The words hit me like a physical blow. You invited us. You called me yourself. Christmas dinner at 2 o'clock. Please, could you just leave? Your sister is on her way with her family, and this day belongs to her." I stood there, literally speechless, while Lydia and Lucas pressed closer to my sides. Before I could even form a response, I heard the distinctive sound of Fiona's BMW pulling into the driveway behind us. My mother's face transformed from cold dismissal to complete panic. "I told you not to come here," she screamed loud enough that neighbors probably heard. Fiona came running up the front steps, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the December wind, her designer coat flapping behind her. When she saw us, her face twisted with a kind of fury had only seen her display when she didn't get her way. "Mom, I told you not to invite them. Why are they here? Thanks for ruining my day." Behind her, Brad was helping Sophia and Madison out of their car seats. The little girls were looking around in confusion, probably wondering why their aunt and cousins were being yelled at on Christmas. That's when my father, Edwin Mitchell, appeared in the doorway. For a moment, I thought he might be the voice of reason. Dad had always been the calmer parent, the one who tried to keep peace, but he looked right through me as if I were invisible and focused entirely on Fiona. "Please don't leave, sweetheart," he begged her. "She's going right now. She, not Amelia, not your other daughter, not their aunt. She, Lydia, tucked on my coat sleeve. I looked down to see both of my children staring up at me with tears filling their eyes. "Mom," Lydia whispered, "did we do something wrong?" Before I could answer, before I could wrap them in my arms and tell them this wasn't about them, my mother heard the question. And instead of reassuring her grandchildren, instead of showing even a shred of decency, she barked at them. Yes, by showing up here. That was the moment something inside me died. Not broke, not cracked, but died completely. The part of me that had spent 28 years trying to earn my parents' love, trying to understand why I was never enough, trying to make excuses for their behavior, that part just stopped existing. I took Lydia's hand in my right hand and Lucas's in my left, and I walked down those front steps without saying a single word. I loaded my crying children into the car, put the apple pie and all those carefully chosen gifts in the trunk, and drove away from my childhood home for what I knew would be the last time. But as I drove through the neighborhood where I'd grown up, past the park where I'd learned to ride a bike, past the elementary school where I'd been honor roll student of the month, 3 years running, I wasn't thinking about nostalgia or sadness or even the hurt. I was thinking about justice. You see, there were things about my family's finances that Fiona didn't know, things my parents had hidden from their precious golden child because they didn't want to burden her with ugly realities. I knew because I'd been handling their tax preparations for the past 5 years. I knew because I'd helped them navigate their mortgage refinancing 2 years ago. I knew because when Dad had his heart attack last spring, I was the one who sat in hospital waiting rooms and dealt with insurance companies while Fiona was on vacation in the Hamptons. My parents were in serious financial trouble. Dad's small accounting firm had been struggling since bigger companies started using software instead of local CPAS. Mom's part-time job at the library barely covered groceries. They'd been living off credit cards and the equity in their house for almost 2 years. More importantly, they borrowed $25,000 from me 18 months ago to avoid foreclosure. I had the promissory note signed and notarized sitting in my home office. They were supposed to be making monthly payments of $500, but had managed exactly 3 payments before the excuses started. Things are tight this month, Amelia. Maybe next month. The car needed repairs, honey. Well, catch up soon. Your father's medications are so expensive. Just give us a little more time. Just give us a little more time. I'd been patient because they were my parents. I'd been understanding because I thought family meant something to them. I'd even stopped asking for payments altogether 6 months ago because I didn't want to add stress to their lives. But family, it turned out, was a one-way street in the Mitchell household. The Monday after Christmas, I called my lawyer, Janet Rodriguez. We'd worked together when I bought my house, and I trusted her completely. Janet, I need to discuss collecting on a debt, a significant debt with family members. Oh, Melia, that's always complicated. How significant are we talking? $25,000 plus interest. I have a signed promissory note. There was a pause. That's not a small amount, and they're not making payments. They haven't made a payment in over a year, and based on some recent events, I don't believe they ever intend to. What kind of timeline are you looking at? Usually, I recommend trying to work things out personally first. I thought about Lydia's tear-filled eyes, about Lucas asking if he'd done something wrong, about my mother barking at my children on Christmas Day. I want to move as quickly as legally possible. I can file a lawsuit by the end of the week. Here is the second part of your script. In cases like this, with clear documentation and missed payments, we can usually get a judgment pretty quickly. But Amelia, once we start this process, there's no going back. Family relationships, the family relationship was destroyed by them, not by me. By Friday, my parents had been served with papers. By the following Wednesday, Fiona was calling me for the first time in 6 months. Amelia, what the hell is wrong with you? How could you sue Mom and Dad the same way they could treat their grandchildren like unwanted strangers on Christmas Day? That was just a misunderstanding. You know how stressed Mom gets during the holidays. Really? Because it seemed pretty clear to me. You told her not to invite us, and she followed your instructions instead of acting like a grandmother who loves her grandchildren. Look, maybe we can work something out. Maybe we all overreacted. You're right, Fiona. You all did overreact, but I didn't. I'm simply collecting money that's legally owed to me. They don't have $25,000. You know, Dad's business is struggling. Then they should have thought of that before they decided I wasn't worth basic human decency. The next call came from my father. Amelia, please, we can work this out. You don't understand the position this puts us in. Actually, Dad, I understand perfectly. You borrowed money from me when you needed it. You haven't made payments in over a year, and now you're surprised that there are consequences. But we're family. Funny. I didn't feel like family when you were begging Fiona not to leave and telling her I was going right now. I didn't feel like family when you ignored your grandchildren's tears. That was just Fiona gets so upset, and we didn't want to ruin her Christmas. So you ruined mine instead. And more importantly, you ruined Lydia and Lucas's Christmas. Your own grandchildren. What my father didn't know was that Lydia had been having nightmares since Christmas Day. She'd wake up crying, asking me if she was a bad person, if that's why Grandma and Grandpa didn't want her around. Lucas had become withdrawn at school, his teacher, Mrs. Henderson, calling to express concern about his sudden change in behavior. Mr. Mitchell, Mrs. Henderson had told me during our conference, Lucas used to be one of our most outgoing students, but since Christmas break, he's been quiet, almost sullen. He told me his grandparents don't love him anymore. I'm wondering if there's something at home we should discuss. I'd had to explain to Lucas's teacher that his grandparents had rejected him on Christmas Day. Watching this professional educator's face transform from concern to shock to barely controlled to anger. They said that to children, she'd asked her voice tight. On Christmas, the ripple effects were everywhere. Lydia had quit the school choir because she said singing made her think of Christmas carols, which made her think of that terrible day. Lucas had stopped asking to visit his grandparents, something he used to beg for weekly. My children were paying the price for my family's dysfunction, and that was unforgivable. Amelia, honey, please, we can set up a payment plan. We can. You had 18 months to set up a payment plan. Dad, do you know that Lydia has been having nightmares? Do you know that Lucas's teacher called because he's become withdrawn at school? Do you know that your grandchildren are suffering because of what you did to them? There was silence on the other end of the line. You borrowed money from me when you were desperate, and I helped you without hesitation because I thought that's what family did. But when my children needed their grandparents to show them basic love and respect, you chose Fiona's tantrum over their well-being. This conversation is over, but the calls didn't stop there. Over the next week, I heard from extended family members who've gotten wind of the lawsuit. My Aunt Margaret called, trying to play peacemaker. Amelia, dear, I know you're hurt, but suing your parents seems extreme. Can't you all sit down and work this out like adults? Aunt Margaret, were you there on Christmas Day when my mother screamed at my children that they'd done something wrong by showing up? Well, no. But were you there when my father ignored Lydia and Lucas completely while begging Fiona not to leave? I understand you're upset, but do you understand? Because I don't think you do. This isn't about one bad day. This is about 28 years of being treated like the spare daughter and watching my children inherit that same treatment. My cousin Danny called next, Fiona's childhood friend who'd always been part of her inner circle. Amelia, come on. You know how your parents are. They've always been a little dramatic, but they love you. Danny, if someone consistently treats you like you don't matter, what exactly am I supposed to call that if not the absence of love? Look, maybe Fiona was out of line, but ruining your parents financially seems like overkill. I'm not ruining them financially. I'm collecting money they legally owe me, money they borrowed and chose not to repay. But you know they're struggling. Yes, I do know. I'm the one who helped them with their taxes for 5 years. I'm the one who sat in hospital waiting rooms when Dad had his heart attack while Fiona was vacationing in the Hamptons. I'm the one who's been there for every crisis. And this is how they repay that loyalty. Even my children started getting pressure from their cousins. Sophia and Madison, Fiona's twins, had been coached to call Lydia and Lucas. Why is your mom being so mean to Grandma and Grandpa? Sophia asked Lydia during one of these orchestrated phone calls. Lydia, bless her heart, handled it with more grace than the adults in this situation. We're not being mean, Sophia. Grandma and Grandpa hurt our feelings really badly. And sometimes when people hurt you, there have to be consequences. But now Grandma cries all the time. Maybe she should have thought about that before she yelled at us on Christmas. I was proud of Lydia for standing her ground, but I hated that she had to defend herself to her 8-year-old cousin. I hated that my children were being used as pawns in Fiona's manipulation games. The pressure campaign reached its peak when my mother showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant, Rebecca, buzzed me. Amelia, your mother is here. She seems upset. I found my mother in the waiting area, her eyes red-rimmed and her usual perfect appearance disheveled. She was clutching a tissue and looked like she hadn't slept in days. Mom, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I led her to my office and closed the door. Amelia, please drop this lawsuit. We'll figure out a way to pay you back, I promise. You've had 18 months to figure it out. I know we messed up, but losing the house, Amelia, the house holds every memory of you and Fiona growing up, your first steps, your first words, your graduation parties. It also holds the memory of every time you chose Fiona over me, every birthday where her achievements mattered more than mine, every family event I was excluded from. We never meant to exclude you. Mom, 3 months ago, you had a family barbecue that I found out about on Facebook. When I called to ask why I wasn't invited, you told me Fiona had organized it and forgot about me. How do you forget your other daughter? My mother's face crumpled. Fiona said she was handling the invitations, and I just assumed. You assumed what? That I didn't deserve to be included. That Lydia and Lucas didn't deserve to see their grandparents. No, that's not. We love Lydia and Lucas so much. Do you? Because children judge love by actions, not words. And your actions on Christmas Day told them very clearly that they weren't wanted. That was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. It was the last in a long line of mistakes, Mom. And I'm done pretending that this pattern is acceptable. She sat in my guest chair, sobbing quietly. Part of me wanted to comfort her the way I've been comforting her my entire life whenever she was upset, but I thought about Lydia's nightmares and Lucas's withdrawn behavior at school, and I stayed behind my desk. The house means everything to your father and me. My children mean everything to me, and you damage them in ways that might take years to heal. We can fix this, Amelia. We can all sit down as a family. And Mom, we tried sitting down as a family. We tried it for 28 years, and every single time, Fiona's wants and needs took priority over everyone else's. I'm done trying. After she left, I sat in my office for an hour, staring out the window at the city skyline. My assistant knocked softly. Are you okay? Do you want to cancel your 2 o'clock? No, I'm fine. Just family drama. But I wasn't fine. Seeing my mother cry had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. I'd never wanted to hurt my parents. I just wanted them to acknowledge what they'd been doing and change their behavior. That night, I called my therapist, Dr. Miriam Hole, who I'd been seeing sporadically since my divorce. Amelia, you've talked about your family dynamics before. How are you feeling about taking this legal action? Confused, guilty, angry, sometimes all at once. Tell me about the guilt. My mother came to my office today crying. She looked broken, Dr. Holt, and part of me wanted to just drop everything and pretend Christmas never happened. What stopped you? My children. Lydia asked me last week if she was adopted because she couldn't understand why her grandparents treated her differently than her cousins. That must have been heartbreaking. It was, and it made me realize that protecting my parents' feelings isn't more important than protecting my children's emotional well-being. What about your own emotional well-being? I was quiet for a long moment. I spent my whole life trying to earn their love, trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. But I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just born first, and somehow that made me less valuable in their eyes. And now I'm done trying to earn something that should have been freely given. The therapy session helped clarify my thinking, but it didn't make the situation easier. The community pressure was intense. My hometown of Millbrook Heights was small enough that everyone knew everyone's business, and the Mitchell family drama was apparently prime gossip material. I'd run into family friends at the grocery store who'd give me pointed looks and whisper to each other. Mrs. Patterson from down the street actually cornered me in the cereal aisle. Amelia Mitchell, I'm ashamed of you. After everything your parents have done for you over the years, Mrs. Patterson, respectfully, you don't know the full situation. I know you're suing your own parents over money at their age. I'm collecting a legitimate debt that they've refused to pay. Family doesn't sue family, young lady. And family doesn't scream at children on Christmas Day. But here we are. The social pressure was designed to make me fold, to make me prioritize everyone else's comfort over my own family's well-being. It was the same dynamic that had governed my entire life. Amelia needs to be the bigger person. Amelia needs to understand. Amelia needs to compromise. But I wasn't that person anymore. The beautiful thing about having documentation is that the legal system doesn't care about family dynamics or golden children or who gets upset easily. The court looked at a signed promissory note, a clear pattern of missed payments, and bank records showing my parents had the means to pay but chose not to. The judgment came down in my favor 6 weeks later. $25,000 plus 18 months of acred interest at the rate specified in the original agreement, plus court costs and attorney fees. Total amount, $31,473. Things took a turn when my parents didn't have enough cash to cover the debt. The court authorized garnishment of my father's business accounts and placed a lien on their house. I later found out from my cousin Michelle that this caused a major crisis in the Mitchell household. My parents had to reveal their financial troubles to Fiona, something they'd kept hidden for fear it would burden her. But Fiona was furious, not at the debt, but because her inheritance was now tied up in legal proceedings. The family meeting happened at my parents' house on a Tuesday evening. Michelle, more like a sister than Fiona, was invited for moral support. Instead, she gave me a detailed report the next day. "You should have seen Fiona's face when they told her about the money," Michelle said. "She went completely white, then completely red. I thought she was going to have an aneurysm." "What did she say?" I asked. "First, she screamed at them for borrowing money from you. Then she screamed at them for not paying it back. Then she demanded to know why they never told her about their financial problems. Uncle Edwin tried to explain, but she lost it completely. It got worse when Fiona demanded they call me to work it out because she didn't want this affecting her children. I had a hard time swallowing this. "What about my kids, who were banned from Christmas dinner?" I retorted. "That's exactly what your mom said," Michelle replied. She pointed out that maybe if Fiona hadn't insisted you not be invited, none of this would have happened. The next week, things moved fast. My parents were forced to sell the house to cover the debt, the house they'd lived in for 32 years. Fiona called, but this time her tone was different, less demanding, more desperate. "Amelia, please, they're going to lose the house." "That's unfortunate," I said. "It's our childhood home," she argued. "It's also collateral for a debt they didn't repay." She offered to pay me back in full. "That's generous, Fiona, but I'm not interested in your money." "What do you mean you're not interested?" she asked incredulously. "I'm doing this because actions have consequences," I replied. "I'm doing this because my children deserve better than being screamed at on Christmas Day. I spent 28 years being treated like the spare daughter, and I'm done." Then, the conversation took the turn I'd been waiting for. "So, what do you want?" "I want a public apology," I said. "I want you to call Lydia and Lucas personally and apologize for Christmas Day. I want Mom and Dad to acknowledge they borrowed money from me and failed to pay it back. I want all of you to understand that my children are not second-class grandchildren who can be excluded from family events." Fiona reluctantly agreed. "Fine, I'll call them today." The next evening, Fiona called Lydia. "Hi, Lydia, it's Aunt Fiona. I wanted to apologize for Christmas Day. It was wrong of us to make you feel unwelcome. It was awkward, but it was something." Lydia graciously accepted the apology. The call to Lucas was similar but slightly more natural. Fiona struggled, but she apologized. The hardest conversation came when my mother called me. "Amelia, I need to apologize, not just for Christmas Day, but for a lot of things over the years," she continued. "We borrowed money from you when we were desperate, and we should have prioritized paying you back. We let Fiona dictate family events when we should have stood up for you." Her voice trembled as she added, "We treated you and Lydia and Lucas in a way that was inexcusable." I felt a deep sorrow hearing her words. "Why did you let Fiona exclude us from so many things?" I asked. "She gets so emotional when she doesn't get her way," my mother explained. "It was easier to avoid conflict than to stand up to her, but that was wrong." Then, my father came on the line, his voice thick with regret. "Amelia, I owe you the biggest apology of all. I stood there on Christmas Day, watching my granddaughter ask if she'd done something wrong, and I didn't have the backbone to tell her she was perfect." He went on, "I failed you when you were growing up by not calling out the favoritism, and I failed Lydia and Lucas by letting it continue. The house sold in March, and my parents moved into a small apartment. They paid me back every penny, but during those months, Fiona's marriage started falling apart. I learned from Michelle that the stress of the potential lawsuit had caused massive fights between Fiona and Brad. He wasn't happy about bailing out his in-laws, especially when he found out about the financial problems Fiona had been hiding from him. Brad, to his credit, started questioning Fiona's actions. He learned about her shopping debts and the lies she'd told about me being excluded from family events. The final straw came when he realized she'd been dishonest about the family dynamics. The divorce papers were filed in April, and Brad made sure that his daughters would have regular contact with their extended family, including me and my children. Easter Sunday was the first post-divorce family gathering. It was cramped and awkward, but we were all there. Me, Lydia, Lucas, my parents, Fiona, sullen but present, and even Brad with his daughters. For the first time in years, family felt like it might actually mean something. Fiona left early, but no one tried to stop her. "Let her go," my father said quietly. "This family is better when it's not walking on eggshells." That Christmas, we were together again. The apartment was small and modest, but Lydia and Lucas laughed with their cousins. The grandparents showered them with attention, and I actually relaxed. Fiona came, but left early, making up an excuse. Everyone knew it was because she couldn't stand not being the center of attention, but no one tried to convince her to stay. Since then, everything has changed. My parents are thriving in their small apartment, and their small bookkeeping business is doing well. They've paid me back every penny. Fiona and I may not be friends, but we've reached a civil peace. Most importantly, my children are flourishing in an environment where they are valued and wanted. Lydia's confidence has blossomed, and Lucas has grown more secure in who he is. What's most rewarding is seeing my children thrive in a family dynamic where love and respect are the priorities. Lydia's photo album is now proudly displayed at my parents' apartment, and Lucas's soccer schedule is on their fridge. Brad remarried, and his new wife welcomed my children as her own. At their wedding, Brad pulled me aside and apologized for not questioning the family dynamic sooner. Now, 2 years later, my parents are happy, their business is thriving, and my children are securely rooted in the family. I've learned the importance of setting boundaries and demanding respect. The lawsuit wasn't about money. It was about forcing everyone to face the consequences of their actions. The best part of all this isn't the money I recovered. It's knowing that my children are growing up in an environment where family means love, respect, and inclusion, not manipulation or favoritism.